Welcome to the Flower Lounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, flower alchemist and founder of LOTUSWEI, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. Welcome to this week's episode of the Flower Lounge. And first, let me tell you about this incredible man that I'm about to interview, and then I'll tell you why I'm interviewing him. So Dr. Christopher Zambakari is a South Sudanese American who emigrated to the United States in 2001 as a refugee from Sudan. In 2015, he founded the Zambakari Advisory, an organization that provides consulting services in the U.S., Africa, and the Middle East. He has a degree in psychology, an MBA in international finances, a master's degree in international studies and conflict resolution, and a doctorate in law and policy. Okay, so I looked at Chris's website for, I think, maybe the second time in my life. And I love that we could be talking about sociopolitical analysis and strategic intelligence, political transitions, or business expansion, forecasting and auditing. And maybe we should talk about that at some point. And if you're interested in any of that, you can visit his website at zambakari.org, and that's ZAMBAKARI.org. But what I love about how we met and how I've gotten to know him now for several years and never knew until this week that he immigrated to the U.S. as a refugee from Sudan. We speak and have spoken in a completely different language with each other during the last few years, and that's where this interview comes into play. So one of Chris's favorite hobbies is social dancing and teaching Latin dances, aka he is an amazing salsa dancer. He has performed for large audiences in New York, Phoenix, Australia, and Singapore, and he teaches salsa lessons for the Mambo Exquisite Dance Company in the City of Phoenix Community Centers to youth and seniors. Thank you, Chris, for being here. So excited.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so thrilled to have this conversation. We usually start each episode with a little exercise. So just close your eyes, and if you can go back to your childhood, to a time when you played around flowers or plants or trees, and just think about what you were doing at the time and who you were with, and see if you can identify a favorite flower or plant. And then in your mind, reflect on the 3 words you would use to describe that flower or plant's personality. And then whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes and tell us what you were thinking of, what you were up to at the time, what your favorite flower was, and the 3 words you would use to describe it.
I'll use one word: graceful. Gardenia.
Gardenia.
The one plant I'm trying to save at home. It's survived about a year, but I want to make sure there were 2. One didn't survive, but one is currently trying to make it. Gardenia, besides being very, very fragrantful flowers, are very graceful. To me, they're just epitome.
And did you grow up with gardenias?
Yes, they're like my childhood. Like they're at our house.
Did you play around them?
Play around them, smell them. But also, I as a kid, when it came to flowers, because I spent a lot of time playing as a child, I always tell people that it's hard for me to find someone that had my kind of childhood exactly in terms of substance and texture, because it was so free. And like I was born free, and the sun came up and off I went to just be me and to do me 100% of the time.
Play outside?
Just play outside.
Uh-huh.
I left the house. As soon as I had breakfast, I was gone. And there was no, you need to go to school, you need to dress like this. Hardly any clothes, if you think about it. Like I had a little short and that was it. That was good enough for me. Because there were not proper toys when I was a kid. So you had to make your own toys. So I spent half the day just trying to make these little cars or the little bikes that I used to play. And I went on journeys, joined my buddies. So we'll go on long trips, took a little sample of rice, some condiments, and then we go about an hour or so out of the place where we were living. And then we'll, cook in tiny little pots and then eat there and then come back. Every day, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, my God. So when I think about that phase of my life, it's unbelievable because the memory of it is just so good. And I kind of feel a little bad for children today because they didn't have that. Right now you wake up and you're going to do this and do this and do this, and you're like, your childhood kind of just slip away. So Gardenia, Gardenia is just really, really awesome flower. Awesome plant.
And if you had 2 other words besides graceful, what would those 2 words be?
Pure. Elegant.
Okay, because what we find is that the 3 words you use to describe your childhood flower would describe the way or the quality in which you bring your greatest gifts into this world. Graceful, elegant, pure.
Wow. Interesting.
Does that resonate?
Yeah. Yes. Actually, when this comes up in the Conduct of Salsa, that took me by surprise. I never really thought of it that way. But in New York, when I started social dancing, and people will come and tell me, oh, you're my favorite dancer. Every time I come out and I'll dance with you, and that's it for me. And one time, I never forget, this girl came in, danced with me, and then she said, I gotta leave. I said, well, we're halfway through a social. What do you mean you're leaving? She said, well, because then downhill from here. You're absolutely the very pinnacle of my social dancing experience. If I stay longer, then I just go home with some average dances. And she said, no, it's better for me to live here, feeling exactly what I feel right now. Then I just stood there like, what? What are you talking about?
Of course.
So yeah.
So how old were you when you came to the US?
14. So 2000. So I'm turning 32.
You're still so young. So
yeah, about 14, 15.
And when was the first time that you heard salsa music?
On the radio here in Phoenix.
How old were you? Roughly?
About 14.
Oh, when you were that young.
And I thought, wow, this sounds something familiar, because salsa always reminds me of my childhood. It reminds me not just my childhood, but my sort of my upbringing. The drum beats, the instrument that are used in a typical salsa orchestra. These are the kind of, in sort of its most original form, was something that I grew up listening to. So I don't really think hard when I dance salsa or when I listen to it, because it resonates so deep inside of me that it's almost like it's home. It's normal.
That must have been a good feeling.
Oh, it is. And in fact, there are a few songs when you hear them, it's like, wow, like they take me back 30 years just like that.
Wow.
And they remind me of my early days.
Wow.
And no other music has that. That's the crazy part.
And how old were you when you started dancing?
Well, I grew up dancing. So where I come from, well, I'll say, in a typical African context, music plays a very big role. It played both a symbolic role, it played a sort of the entertaining aspect, but it's also cultural. So when a child is born, you dance, there's music. You sit around the fire, people tell stories, they play instrument, there's music. When you go to war, there's music. When you're harvesting, there's music. There are different type of music designed for different occasions. So there's music all around. The idea of not having music is just very foreign to the place where I was born. So I feel like and when I go to local Sudanese events, there's always music, and you're always expected to dance. You're always expected to get out there and shake it and do stuff. And even in New York, when I was in New York, we organized events. And one year we organized what was known as the African Cultural Hour. So every year, the International House every month or so, they'll have a region that is showcased. And because there were 97 countries represented in there, so they'll ask people from that part of the world to organize a cultural exhibition of a sort that promotes their culture, where they come from, but also educates people about that part of the world. So it was sort of cross-cultural. And with the African Cultural Hour, we got off to a very rocky start, because there's so many Africans come from different places, and they say, well, it's kind of crazy to say African Cultural Hour because we're so different.
It's a whole continent.
Yeah. And before that, the Indian, the Pakistani, they had a fallout almost, because, the Indians said, well, we're bigger. So in that 1 hour, we want at least 35 minutes. The Pakistani said, no way. It says even. So, and the Africans were about to protest. And me being the chair of the organizing committee and later on the MC, I told them, look, you can either sit out and protest, or you can use that 1 hour and really showcase and give people what the image of Africa you want them to take away, because you are in the driver's seat of that message. And they thought, okay. So we put together a fashion show. We contacted restaurants in New York. They donated tons of food for free. And then we had presentations by different people. And we also had a choir. We had someone that basically got a bunch of people that had never sang before, taught them to sing three different South African languages. And then they performed. And then we had a South African a sort of protest song also. And there was one other thing. Oh, and then we had traditional dances. So we had these 2 girls from Uganda that said, well, we can teach you guys like a typical Ugandan courtship dance. And wow, you can only run through twice during rehearsal because it was so exhausting, right? I mean, the amount of energy it took from you. By the end of it, you're like, we're done. And that was it. We'll meet, run through it twice, and that was it.
Wow.
Right. And the day of the show, there was no run through because you're like, no, I won't be able to dance, you know. By the end, you're sweating, like you're sweating from head to toe.
Right.
Very, very exhausting. So music has always been part of my upbringing, but Latin music in particular was something that I will pick up here in Phoenix. And then first at ASU, the West Campus where I went to school. But that was like once a week. And then I so enjoyed it. I started taking classes in Scottsdale with 2 instructors there. And this was 2006, 2007. Then I graduated and got accepted to do my MBA in New York. And then I moved to New York. And waha! Like, hello.
The scene in New York.
Here I am.
Especially at that time. So different from Phoenix, right?
But New York really made me, it really defined how I dance, what I know of salsa, because the level of dancing in New York is so high. And also the access you have in New York, the quality in terms of music, the DJs, the scene there is unbelievable. Something like unheard of. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, for the listeners who don't know anything about salsa, I mean, I think there are a lot of things I think that surprise people about salsa dancing. One is I really feel like it's a moving meditation. I mean, it's such a complex dance that you can't be thinking when you're doing it. You just can't.
That's true.
You would screw up if you were thinking, right? You just got to move.
When you're new to salsa, it is normal to think a lot about it because it's new to you, and you're worried about your feet, you're worried about moving, you're worried about music, you're worried about your partner, and there's so much happening. And the easiest way to approach it is to think about it, because you're thinking, okay, if I think about it, then it makes more sense. But you realize that actually it's backward. That salsa is really great when you're not really thinking about it. That you allow the music to call what is in you out, to bring it out, and for you to respond to that music, to that beat, that specific sound, and to the message, right? Because each song is different. It takes you on a different journey, and to be open to it, right? By freeing yourself of whatever you brought in, you're going to be more responsive to what the music asks of you, and then you're present. You cannot multitask at the same time, in the sense where you're worried at the same time you're thinking about tomorrow or yesterday, and at the same time you listen to this music. It doesn't really work that way.
Right. So if you're listening and you've never seen someone doing salsa before, there's typically it's a man and a woman in a partnership, and you're touching generally just fingertips.
Yes.
It could be just a couple fingertips actually. And you're moving your feet in a way that is, I mean, how would you describe it? I mean, how would you break down salsa like in a super basic way?
So if you think about it, so there are just 2 broad schools in salsa. Right? Salsa is just this umbrella term that brings together so many of the Afro-Latin rhythms, right? There are 24 of them. And so when you say salsa, it's an umbrella term that brings together many, many different rhythms. That's the first thing.
Right.
But what we call commercial salsa, this linear dance, depending if you're dancing East Coast or West Coast, if you're dancing on 1 or on 2, I'll think the simplest way, if you're dancing New York style, the East Coast, the gentleman breaks back on the left foot. He breaks back on the left foot, and then the lady breaks forward on the right foot, right? So it's sort of symmetrical. he steps back, you step forward, and then you step forward and she steps back. But if you're dancing on one, the West Coast, it's the opposite, right? So the gentleman breaks forward instead of breaking back.
And it's just sort of like, it's essentially the same dance. It just looks a little bit different, I find, in that, well, we both dance on two, but I find that it seems to me that it's different with every song, but it seems to me the way that you're dancing with the music is different, right? Whether you're on either style.
Yes, but also music, there are certain music that are cut on one. They have a very on one feel to
better
them.
On one,
yes, right. And then a lot of the music, I would say even almost most of the music that come out of New York in Salsa's golden era, they're cut on two. The feel is on two. And when you dance on two, you can feel it. You can feel, because you're dancing to the conga, you're and it's consistent.
And so when you talked before about being called to express something or seeing the music bring something out in someone, can you talk more about that?
Yes. I have a metaphor that I like to use. So having danced for so long and also being in a teacher's role, you get people exactly how they are. And people come to you, in my opinion, they come to you almost in a closet. And because there are some things about themselves that they're not aware of. They may be inhibited somehow. But once you start dancing or learning how to dance salsa, because it demands of you that you be you, that you not try to be someone else, but that you be yourself and fully yourself. And in that regard, salsa songs will have a tendency to pull you to the front. It'll pull you forward and, or using my metaphor, bring you out of the closet that is self-imposed or societally imposed on you. It says, no, come out of there and just be present, be now, be here. And in that sense, I've never met someone that has taken salsa seriously and gone right back into the closet. It usually brings them out and enhances everything around them. The way they think, the way they move, the way they hold themselves. In fact, the level of confidence improves also. These are all the benefits of salsa that really doesn't get credited properly.
The side effects.
Oh yeah, the side benefits. Yeah. So it allows you to be real within yourself.
Yeah, I remember when I was first starting, I mean, even just in terms of posture and how you hold yourself and having more awareness into how you occupy space, like literally how your body occupies space, and then how you are seen, how you're seen occupying space, and then literally just being seen. I mean, I just remember during the whole first year of, learning salsa, and I'm still learning, I'm still a beginner, but the vulnerability that it takes to be seen on that level, I feel like is next level.
Oh yes. So if you go back to the metaphor of being in the closet, for most people in their professional life, they're used to operating at a certain level, and they rarely allow themselves to be vulnerable or to be open with other people.
Well, and if they are, it's probably with like one person intimately, right?
It's very limited to certain people,
right?
At all, if there are,
if at all,
those people,
right?
Whereas you come to this dance, and this dance is like I don't really care for the background. I don't really care for how close you are. All I care about is you being you, be authentically you, and you being open. But you being you is ultimately, it's going to mean that you need to be open and sort of transparent, and you can't just hide, right? You can't put a wall between you, because if you do, then it really hinders the dance. And when I dance with someone, I can always feel when someone is very defensive, or if somebody is very open and playful, like within the first 3-4 seconds, you can tell that about someone. And so it teaches you some very fundamental things about existing, about living, that I don't think work. I joke around. I tell people I have 5 degrees, and what salsa has given me, none of those degrees have given me. And when you're taught by a very good instructor, they will always emphasize and teach you body awareness.
Oh my God!
Right? Because you've got to know how your body moves, and not two bodies can be the same. What is good to you may not be good to someone else, but being intimately aware of you on the inside and how you move is crucial. And a good teacher will bring that out in you. And and that's something that goes beyond salsa. It goes, into the rest of.
Oh my God. I know it's almost embarrassing. I mean, for me, because I notice that how I dance is how I move, is how I operate in my life. So when I noticed, and I still notice it to this day, it's like, right? So I noticed that I oftentimes try too hard. And so literally that'll express itself in an overextension of my body. And then I'm trying too hard in work. I'm trying too hard in all different kinds of situations. And so it's an incredible awareness practice to just notice that about yourself and your movements. And then also when you're put in the situation of dancing with someone else, when they have that really high level of awareness, and I feel like salsa dancing trains people to have an exquisitely high level of awareness of not only your own body, but the other person's body.
Mm-hmm.
So you're listening to the energetics and the energetic communication of the person that you're dancing with. It's almost like you can feel into somebody's energetic space of their body and they're feeling into your space. And so that's like a whole other level of, really intimacy and connection.
If you think about the two people that come, when you get on the dance floor, you have two people that may be dependent, independent, or two independent people or two dependent people, and somehow they get into this partner dancing, and it asks that you be aware of the other person. You be aware of you, but you be aware of them, and because it's not prescriptive. A good social dancing is not necessarily scripted. It's not
at all
predetermined.
It's all improv.
Because it's all improvisation. It demands, I think it calls for a greater awareness of this other person, how they move, and what's good for them, what's not good for them, and what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. And if you're a very good dancer, you'll tend to sort of downplay the weaknesses and really put somebody's strength on the foreground. And it always makes people feel very good about themselves,
which is because not nobody what you
wants.
Do.
Yeah, nobody wants to constantly be reminded of their weaknesses, and if you get really hung up on that, then the dance is terrible because it's a constant reminder of what's not so good, what is very bothersome. But when you find out, the strength, and you elevate that to somebody's area of comfort, you elevate that to a high level, then it's seamless. And it's almost as if somebody can read your mind. And it's like magic. You don't have to tell them that. But that requires that you include the other person in this experience. I call that synergy. It's greater than being just an individual. It's greater than just being an independent dancer, an independent thinker. Synergy builds interdependence that says, you, me, we form an us, and the us is where the magic happens, right? It's the confluence between these two of us, this thing that you and I create, like on the go.
Right. You had said interconnected is another good word. And I noticed, one of the reasons that I personally love dancing with you so much is that you have such a mastery over what you just mentioned in terms of highlighting people's strengths, but you're also not afraid to really hone in on weaknesses. And I realized early on when I was dancing with you that, not only are you unafraid to dance with total beginners, but you also, with people who really want to improve, you have this incredible quality of really searching and knowing and understanding other people's weaknesses. And then I wouldn't call it hammering it, but like you'll put me in a position where I'm like confronted with my own weaknesses so that I can see it. And so in a sense, it's like in meditation, when I'm teaching meditation, oftentimes I'll say the observation is the dissolution. So meaning when I notice something about myself, it already starts to shift and change. And so you can do that with other people too. So it's just like, it's this seemingly simple thing. It's dance, but it's very profound because you bring people into a state of being able to see their own weakness. And in that observing, you already start to shift it and make changes, or I can make shifts and changes just by seeing that weakness alone. Are you aware that you're really good at that?
Actually, not to that extent. But when I social dance, and it's depending on the energy that I feel and get from someone, if someone want to just, go through some basic things and stay there, then we dance at that level. And that's something I need to figure out really quick, so that we can spend the rest of the dance, trying to make that work for both of us. But if you're dancing with someone that is on a growth path, then, and they're looking at taking their dance to a new level, then we not only have to do what is known, we also have to push the boundary and push the frontier of the unknown. And once you get there, even sometimes I don't know what is there, but it is good for both of us to be there and to see that, because we can see it, then we know what is what. And if you really want to master and develop, then you need to operate at that frontier, that level in the unknown.
Oh, I love that so much. Okay, so this is something I think the listeners will be really excited about, because it may not be through dance. It may be through meditation. It may be through yoga. It may be through some other practices that they're doing. But this languaging is going to, flower essences, this languaging is going to make sense. Talk more about the unknown. So how do you feel that in salsa dancing? And on what levels do you feel it? Is it physical in terms of creative expression? Is it emotional, energetic? What do you mean when you say going into the unknown?
It's actually total experience. It's not just physical, because dance it's both emotional, it's spiritual. I think that the idea of thinking of dance as a spiritual practice is actually quite good, because it goes beyond the physical. And you can tell when dance is very good. The technical rarely ever impresses people, but when you connect on the emotional, spiritual level with people, a dance becomes almost it becomes memorable. You don't forget it. That is something that is not just physical. It's something that speaks deep into your soul, and you know it, and you know that you know it, right? But because I'm also on a growth path, when I dance with someone, because I don't know where we're going, because it's a journey, and I'm an explorer. You're an explorer. We're both trying to excavate this known territory, and what we find there is very intriguing. I am just as intrigued to know what that is, and it's interesting because people that play along with us, that really explore this unknown, the frontier of the unknown, they will discover things, and sometimes they're not even aware. But I'll pick up on it, and it's absolutely magical in terms of how it feels and how it looks, And the more of that exploration, the more you can dig and expand frontier that you never knew existed, right? Because you're constantly pushing out and pushing into this territory, this fertile ground of growth, versus staying right in your comfort zone where everything is exactly as predicted. It's very unpredictable, right? The unknown is very unpredictable. And if you're comfortable in that level of unpredictability, then you're always going to be on a growth path.
I love that so much. Yeah. Wow. And so what does it feel like to you when you see someone come out of the closet like that?
To me, it's becoming. It's almost as if you want to tell the person that you're meant to be, you're becoming, right? You're in. It's like I have an opportunity to see not the final product, but not the genesis, but this process, right? You have a little glimpse into what someone is becoming. And I think if you spend a lot of time seeing that process fully for what it is, you'll have a whole new appreciation for people. But because we get so gung-ho about where we met people, we fail to see what they're becoming. Ooh. Right? And one person put it this way to me. He said, if you saw someone as a 1, you will almost always treat them as a 1. But if you saw someone as a 10, your entire approach to the person shifts. And that only comes if you fully glimpse into what someone is becoming, right? Because when you meet them may only be just the beginning of the journey. And that is not a good way to frame someone, because eventually the person is going to come out of there. With the right environment, the right nurturing, they will blossom.
I wonder if we can shift gears a little bit and talk about attachment and non-attachment and how salsa dancing can be such an amazing playground for practicing those two, because I think, as human beings, I think we get confused about love. Sometimes we confuse love with attachment. Sometimes we have love, but then there's attachment in there. Then there's good kinds of attachment, like a mother with her child. That's great attachment. And then there's other kinds of attachment, like clinging and grasping and not being able to let go and controlling, right? So it's something that all of us as human beings deal with. We all have it. So what I noticed about salsa dancing is that it is this incredible practice of non-attachment. Do you want to talk about that? Have you noticed the same thing? Because you and I have never talked about this before.
No. And you're absolutely right on it, because so when you go out social dancing, right, you bring yourself, the whole of you, and you're engaging in this dance that is 2-3 minutes, 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes, whatever the duration is, and it's one person put it this way, it's a love story that is told in 3-minute segments, right? It has a beginning and an end, and right at the beginning you understand that we have 3 minutes to have this conversation, tell the story in its full entirety. And so at the end of that song, if you become attached, the song has ended, right? Because it's sort of musically driven. You're saying when the music first starts, you start dancing. When it ends, you stop, and then it's complete.
Right, and you switch partners.
And you switch partners.
Some people think when you do, dances that you have one partner and you only dance with that one partner, and that's not how it is in the salsa scene. Every dance
you got it one evening and you can dance with 20, 25, 30 people.
Right.
And you're constantly switching different song, different people, different stories, because you're constantly telling different stories. And creating these magical moments with different people. So it teaches you to be fully present for the duration of the dance. And then once it's over, you appreciate what was, and then you move on to the next. And you cannot do that if you become overly attached to one person. So you have to learn to let go and to appreciate what is for what it is. In other words, it's not a means to an end. It is an end in itself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you may have certain people on the dance floor that you have more of a like a, perhaps maybe you have more, it's not necessarily chemistry, but more of an understanding, or maybe you're at the same level as they are, or maybe it just feels comfortable. But like you said, you have 3 minutes and that's it. Yes. And maybe, I don't know, I feel like there's this sort of unspoken code in the salsa world that nobody ever talks about. And I've never talked about this with anyone in the community, but there's this kind of like unspoken ethic about, for the most part in general, unless there aren't very many people, you typically dance with one person that night and that's it. You don't typically repeat, right?
I never got the memo, obviously. So I may not dance with everybody when I go out dancing, but people that I enjoy dancing with, or people that enjoy dancing with me, I can dance with them, because I think of each song as a sort of its own complete story. You can tell multiple stories to the same person. So you can dance with the same person 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever times. And I've been to places where there were like only 10 dancers, and at some point you're going to dance with someone more than twice or 3 times. But to me, it's intriguing and it's interesting, because unless you're playing the same song twice, even then it feels differently, right? And in other words, you're looking at the same music differently, you're feeling about it differently. It's very difficult to dance exactly the same way to the same song twice, because the diversity is just so rich. And because the song is layered, there's always something that you're going to hear that you never heard before. And it's going to bring out something in you never knew existed there before. So to me, I rather enjoy sometimes dancing with the same person twice. And the first time it's like a conversation. It's a long conversation. Think of it that way. Long conversation. There's kind of like an introduction. There's like a middle. There's a little bit of drama in there. The little suspense, a little mystery. And then there's a sort of a denouement to that story, and that can take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 songs, especially if it's like an Odyssey level story. It takes a while.
Well, you obviously break the rules, because you're always a rule breaker and you're always going out of the bounds.
That's true.
Have you seen that other people do that though?
there are some people that will dance,
more or less.
But I think what you're saying is pretty common in terms of how people go about dancing. They dance once and then they move on to the next person, or then they just sit out. I personally don't subscribe to that. I think if I have a good chemistry with someone, to me, it's always going to be fun dancing with them, and it's always going to be enjoyable, and I find that to be intriguing. But I also consider myself a storyteller, so I have a lot of stories to tell, and I'm always happy to tell stories.
Yeah, and I think it's so fascinating that, I mean, what really is like so amazing to me is that we live in this culture where, you know, there's so much loneliness, there's so much isolation. People are living alone, they're living with one other person or a few other people in a house, or, you know, there's just, and even when we are around other people, there's just so much loneliness and lack of connection. And like deep